said that y'all were fortunate to have us here. We hope you still feel that way when we're done. All right. As I said, my name is Larry Johnson, and I'm just starting. See, I knew they had to do that, but back then I was half the man I am now.
He worked undercover as Richard Pryor for a couple of years.
Yeah, but as you can tell by my this job is hard on you, you know. Look at, but you know, I've had a wonderful opportunity to be a part of this organization for now almost 30 years, and during that time, I have seen a tremendous amount of change that has occurred not only within our department but within our city. So I feel very fortunate to have had an opportunity to serve throughout the department and be a part of this city and be a part of all the things that have happened in our community and our just in the community at large. So I'm happy to be here, and we appreciate y'all asking us to be here. And I'll kind of turn it over to Lieutenant Simpson. He's going to probably do a lot of this. And what we decided to do was, rather than go through something that was so necessarily rehearsed, we're going to kind of ad-lib this thing, and so y'all bear with us. But I believe that would make it more interesting from a more spontaneous type response. So if at the end, if y'all have questions, or maybe even during the process, if you have questions, be sure raise your hand, and we'll try to answer them. If you know that we're wrong, save it to the end and just let us know, and we'll just make the correction for the next time. All right, thank you.
We're gonna. Oh, they found some pictures of me too. We're going to start out doing a little bit of trivia, and of course we have prizes that go with that, so we'll see how much you know about the police department, and then we'll tell you if you're right or you're wrong. And the first question, if you just raise your hand and yell out your answer, and we'll kind of get through this. How many calls for service, this includes those that are dispatch calls and officer initiated, did CSPD respond to in calendar year 2007? How many calls did we have? Wild guess.
Somebody want to take a guess?
Anybody? Yes, sir. 40,000. Higher. Who's next? 60,000. A little lower. Yes, sir. Way in the back. About 52. You're a little low. Oh, now we're getting all kinds of volunteers. Yes, ma'am. 55. Still a little low. 57, that's close enough. We had 58,309 calls last year that we responded to. And the lady wins a coffee cup. Another question. This is good for a replica police badge lapel pin. How much does it cost to purchase and completely outfit one new police car in College Station? Yes, ma'am. $13,000. A little higher. A lot higher.
Let's go to 23.
23 is still pretty low. 60. I hear 60 somewhere. That is very close. $55,000 is a ballpark on what it costs a car from one year to another. The car itself is about $25,000, and we have another $30,000 worth of equipment that we've got to put in it before it's ready to be used as a police car. Good job. Thank you, sir. And that includes the computers and the video cameras and all these things that you see on the cop show. They all cost a lot of money. How many licensed police officers are currently authorized in College Station? Yes, sir. 116. 116. That is extremely close. You must have cheated on it here. We got 114 positions. We got a shoulder patch from.
It's actually 114. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, he did. He went to the Citizens Police Academy, so he had a little bit of help there. Now we've got 114 positions, from the chief down to the guy that started last week. And these are the guys that just carry the guns. That does not include the communications civilian personnel, but we got 114 spots. And this last one, and this one I just kind of threw in because it seems like you're seeing one every day. How many motor vehicle accidents did we have in College Station last year? 40,000? Well, that's a little high. If you will, raise your hand, and that way if 2 or 3 people guess it right, I know which one to give the prize to. No, ma'am, for the
Last
whole
year.
year, how many car wrecks did we have in College Station? Yes, ma'am. 425. That's pretty low. That's pretty low.
1,000.
That's pretty low.
You're still way low.
5,000
Way-
is too high.
3,750.
37 is too low. I'm sorry, it's too high. 37 is too high.
Okay. 2,750.
2,750 is awful close. We had 2,676 wrecks in College Station last year. And those are just the ones that people called us and told us about. We know there was a lot of them where they're working it out on their own there on the side of the road. So,
Tell us about your own equipment that you're running.
yeah, let me get through we got a little PowerPoint presentation, and then as Chief Johnson said, we'll spend the rest of the time just kind of answering questions and
Yeah.
telling. We'll just kind of open it up and do whatever it is we want to do. I'm afraid if we start that now, we'll never get to this part of it. So, go ahead, Michelle.
Let's go ahead and
Before
get-
we go any further, there's 2 people that I want to thank. One is Janice Kemp, Sergeant Janice Kemp. She works for me. She did most of the research and dug most of this stuff up. She's out of town today and could not be here. And the other is Michelle Quignoni. She's a police assistant, and she put together the PowerPoint and did all the stuff to make it look pretty. And Michelle's leaving me on Friday. She and her husband have found a job in Austin, and they're leaving us. So I'm going to be in a world of hurt come Monday morning. I'm telling you, she has been a real asset to the division. Okay, when we started back in, as most of you know, the College Station was born as a city back in 1938, and lo and behold, in February 1939, somebody decided we needed a cop. So they hired Mr. J.S. Hopper, and the unfortunate part is he lasted 7 months. And that's about all I know about Mr. Hopper. Mr. Howard Lee came along, and I'm not sure if he'd just gotten out of jail or what, but he looks a little scary there. He became a second marshal, and he lasted 5 months. So you can see the tradition of turnover at College Station Police Department started right out of the gate. And then we have a 16-month period there when we don't know if anybody was chief. We are assuming that somebody was playing that role, but we can find no records to indicate who that person was or why he decided to stay only 16
So if
months.
anybody knows that, we'd be glad to
We
know.
can fill in that slot. In March of 1944, Mr. Lee Norwood became chief. Actually, he was city marshal, and he lasted for 24 and a half years. And the next slide there tells you a little bit about him. He was hired as a city marshal, and later that title was changed to police chief. He served for many years, and it was interesting. We were able to determine that the campus patrolmen over at Texas A&M College, as it was called back then, were deputized as city marshals, and they were kind of his backup. So if he got into a mess, he could call upon them, and they would come and help him. And it says, although they were rarely called for help. Believe it or not, right now, University Police is about the first agency that we call when we get in a bind and we need some help. So that started many, many years ago, and it is still true today. In September of 1949, lo and behold, we doubled our strength, and we went from 1 to 2. And somebody decided we need to get a police car, so they got a police car. This is a picture from the Eagle, or Bryan Daily News, I guess it's before they called it the Eagle, in November of 1950, showing our first City College Station police car. And what the caption is there is that the physical education department over at A&M donated a first aid kit to be put into this patrol car. So, and the ironic part is it's just the kind of the beginnings of the collaboration of entities that are donating things to the police department to help make our job easier and to help us do a better job. And the caption, I know you can't read it, but it also said that the officer was going to be teaching some first aid classes as a result of that, so that the patrolman knew how to use it. So.
I think that's teaching the citation.
You think it could have been? This is just a snapshot that we found with Officer Lutke and Chief Norwood in the first police station over on Church Street. Their computers, I guess, were down that day. I don't see them anywhere in the picture. 1950 was a pretty big year, and on October 1st, one man was added to the force to patrol the businesses and residential districts from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. It's believed to be a result of 3 previous robberies, and we think those were probably burglaries, but at any rate, the safe at Black's Pharmacy, located down at the corner of Texas Avenue and Lincoln, was robbed or burglarized 3 times, and so somebody decided we need to put an officer out there at night to try to stop that. And there's a bicycle shop that's located there now, kind of right this side of the Red Lobster. That's where that pharmacy was. Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
I know you don't want to be interrupted, but it's a point of interest.
Mhm.
This is population of College Station in 1950.
Oh, probably 300 or 400. I don't know. I bet Miss Ann could probably tell me that. You know about how much the population was in 1950?
About 7,500 in the mid-50s.
7,500?
Yeah.
It was pretty small. In the 1950s, officers also went to an Army-type uniform. And this was interesting that we found another innovative project that was designed to promote officer accountability. Businesses and residential districts were expected to install punch clocks. And many of you will probably remember those from the old night watchman, where he went around and punched these clocks, and that proved that he was at a certain point at a certain time instead of sleeping in his car somewhere.
That one guy that's working at night.
Yeah. And then lo and behold, the advent of radios came along, and there was what was defined as a 3-way radio, and I'm not sure what a difference in a 2-way and a 3-way radio is, but there was one installed in the only city police car, and it was hooked up to the Bryan Police Sending Station and with the State Highway Patrol. We found a quote from Chief Norwood saying the radio hookup would enable him to intercept speeders who outdistanced the Bryan police. So the friendly competition between College Station and Bryan started in 1950, and I assure you it is still going on today. This is a snapshot that we found, a picture from the Battalion. That's the student newspaper over here at A&M, dated January 13th of 1955. And this is Officer Melvin Lutke is trying to decide what to do about cars that are parked illegally at Northgate.
Sounds familiar?
And that is something that we still deal with every day.
Tell me.
We move up to January 16, 1957. Larry and I had just been born about this time. And there's an Eagle article that says the College Station Police Department adds 3 men. And this brought to a total of 5, Chief Norwood and these 4 gentlemen. Now that photo, that's Marvin Bird over on the left side. So apparently one of those 5 that was listed left, and he was hired sometime after that when that photo was taken. But they now have 5 officers working, and we're up to 1957. Chief Melvin Lutke became chief in September of 1968 and was chief for 5 years. And we're privileged to have some of his family here with us today. If you guys would stand up or raise your hands. This is another newspaper article that was clipped out. I don't have a date on it, but it says that Chief Lutke is presenting badges to the 10th and 11th men on the force in January, so it would have been sometime in the late 50s, early 60s.
Remember
Booker T.
him?
Morgan. Mm-hmm.
Not that I was bad, but I know I was hang with him.
This is a photo from the early 1970s. You'll start to recognize some faces there probably. It's Chief Lutke on the left. Chief Edgar Feldman is in the hat in the upper right-hand corner. Chief Marvin Bird is in the suit in front of him. And don't think we recognize anybody else in that one. If y'all recognize somebody in there, let us know. 1971, Mason Newton. Many of you will probably know him. We talked with some of the folks that had retired recently when we were trying to put together some of the gaps in this, and he started out making $460 a month in 1971. And he sent us a little caption, and I'll just read it. These are his words, saying, "We had about 12 sworn, and there weren't more than 2 on a patrol shift, one that worked from 7 at night to 3 in the morning. Patrol cars had just been replaced with new Plymouths. The best thing about them was air conditioning. Each car had a radio that included car-to-car and inner-city. That way they could talk to each other and also talk to Brian and the other agencies. Spotlights on the new cars were gadgets, and they were mounted on the front left fender and remotely controlled by a switch, which was a bad idea because they moved way too slow. These were eventually replaced with handheld spotlights that had a cord, and they somehow always got hung up under the steering wheel. The cars were white, and they had stick-on decals for markings, and you probably remember in the old days there was just some kind of little markings on the driver's door. That was it. Twin sonic light bar had 2 rotating lights, and he puts in here most of the time, and I know that was always an issue. One of them would turn, the other one never would. And there was a tennis ball that was put under the bar to hold down the wind vibration between the bar and the roof of the car. They had 1 radar. It was a stationary-only model, had a very long sending unit. That's the antenna, and those things were about 18 inches long, I guess. And they were mounted on the rear window, or as he preferred to, in the handheld mode. The next year, they went on and got a moving radar. That allowed them to clock cars when the patrol car was moving. And both of those were manufactured by Custom Signals, and they are still in business, still making radars, still catching people every day. Mason retired at the rank of major on April 30th of 2003, making a little more than $460. Marvin Bird, Chief of Police from September 1973 to January of 1987. And I know we're getting into time now when many of y'all will recognize and remember some of these folks. As you can see, the force is growing a little bit in manpower at that point. This picture was taken in front of the police/fire station that's over here on Texas Avenue next to the current City Hall. Gary Bishop. He started in 1978, making $750 a month. So we're getting rich quick. In his words, he said the time department was located on Texas Avenue along with the fire department, and there were 24 officers. We wore the brown uniforms, which were furnished by the department, and most officers purchased their own revolver. There were up to 4 patrol cars and 1 handheld unit, which was huge. And that hand unit, the walkie-talkies, that thing was about this wide and about this tall. Weighed about 5 pounds probably, and there was 1 of these, so whichever guy was out on a call took it with him so he could communicate back to the office. The only equipment on a duty belt was a gun, an ammo pouch, and handcuffs. And we've come a long way since then, and we will talk about that before we leave. Gary will retire as a lieutenant this coming January 31st, 2008. Almost 30 years. Edgar Feldman became acting chief for about a 6-month period of time during the interim. And Mike Strope became chief on July the 20th of 1987. He served for 4.5 years. Many of you will remember he came back later and served as chief in Bryan. March 1 of 1992, Edgar Feldman became chief for sure, and he lasted. Sure glad he's not here today. He remained chief for 13 years. And during this time, I'll give him credit, during this time was a time when College Station PD was really progressing, and we became accredited, and several things that we maintained under his leadership. He retired in February of 2005, and Mike Clancy took over. He worked for us for 2 3/4 years and retired on the 26th of October 2007. So here's kind of how we've grown. We had 4 officers in 1962, so there wasn't a lot of growth between 39 and 62. We went to 11 and 14 and 35 and 79, and we now have the 114 officers. And most of us, if you'll ask us, consider that not enough. Yes, sir. Question in the back? I'm sorry. Police stations. We've moved a time or two since we got into this business back in the 30s. The first police station was located at 105 North College, Maine. And the campus studio, University Studios, is still there. So many of you will recognize this, but it's in the Northgate area. Lupo's bookstore is up kind of on the left to the other end of the block there. They moved over to what was referred to as Southside, 304 Jersey. Currently, the Rothers bookstore is in that building. And the police department was in the upstairs, from what we could tell. Third location is where Cafe Excel currently is. Again, back up in the Northgate area there on Welborn Road. City Hall and the Public Works and everything was kind of all located there together with the police department. And I'm sorry I don't have dates on these. We don't really know when all that occurred until the next one here. And lo and behold, in 1969, somebody decided we needed a new city hall, a new police station, a new fire station. Going to cost $340,000 for the whole shooting match. $200,000 for the city hall and $140,000 for the police and fire station. And we outgrew that spot pretty quick. The fire station took over the entire building, and we built a new building clear down on the south end of town. I mean, it was way beyond anything. People wondered why we'd go so far south. And that was at 2611 Texas Avenue. That's where the municipal court building eventually moved into there, but this is the part of the police department that's kind of behind the current police department. And that was built in 1978. 9 years later, we had outgrown that building. And we built a 16,000 square foot building in 1986, which is the current police department that faces Texas Avenue. We've been in there for 20 years. And we have outgrown it, I assure you. We found a newspaper article. I know all of you have seen the ducks out there and stuff. And there was a citizen that was very concerned when we started our construction back in 1986 about what had happened to the ducks at the police department. And so our secretary at the time wrote back and explained that the heavy equipment that was doing the excavation and stuff for the new pond where the police department building was going to be had frightened the ducks. So we gathered them up and moved them down to Central Park so that they would be happy. And we still have ducks, and we still have people that are very concerned about their welfare. We said a while ago that they built a new police and fire station for, what, $160,000. We're currently in a $3.3 million renovation at the current building, which is taken in the old municipal court. Most of you will recall they built a new municipal court building over on Krennic Tap 3 or 4 years ago. And that space has been kind of utilized by some of our narcotics folks and our storage and things of that. We now are in the process of trying to renovate that area and give us a little bit more room for some offices. We'll get some new carpet and drapes and wallpaper and furniture. And it will hold us over at least until we can get enough money to build a new building. You've seen this photo. This is the first police car back in 1950. And we've changed 7 times since then. Some of you remember we had the blue, we had sky blue at one time back in the early 70s. And we changed to the brown and gold when we went to the brown uniforms. This was a wild looking police car. Navy blue with white stripes. Went back to the white car. That was a state-of-the-art gradient type stripe that changed colors from one end of the car to the other. We won a prize, a national prize with that vehicle. And this is our current black and white, which is halfway back to where we started, all black. These are becoming very popular again with the two-tone cars and the black and white that were very, very popular back in the 70s. But we have received a lot of compliments on that. It's a fairly simple design, but it's one that the officers themselves designed and put together, and we're very proud of it. And that's what we'll be driving around for the next few years, I'm sure. We found a couple of old things we thought was just kind of neat. That's a wreck that somebody was working. Probably there was only 2 or 3 cars in town at the time, and 2 of them
ran into each other.
This is at what's now Texas George Bush. There was an American gas station there at Highway 6 and Jersey Street. This is a picture of Wayne Onston. He was one of our traffic enforcement officers. It depicts a College Station officer probably as well as any. As you can see from the signs, this was taken at East Bypass and Harvey Road. This was before Post Oak Mall. This was before Harvey Road went east of the bypass. And there was probably nothing but some woods going on out there, and I'm not sure what he was pointing at, but it was not that many years ago, but it reminds us of how much this community has grown in the last 25 years or so. All right.
That's pretty much our planned presentation. Now, I think we talked about we'd like to leave a amount of time to maybe answer your questions. We felt like that we would try to present to you some things we thought might be interesting, but probably we felt like that maybe we could answer the questions that you might have, which might make it more interesting for you. So we had one question about the things that we carry on the belt now, and you'll find probably from officer to officer there'll be some variations. Primarily everyone's carrying a sidearm and handcuffs and
Extra bullets.
Extra magazines, extra ammunition. After that, it really starts to vary. And you'll see even between Lieutenant Simpson and myself, we have different things on our belt. Some of the guys carry their radios all the time. You'll see, I'm surprised I hadn't started ringing or beeping or vibrating or something. I've got a phone, a pager, and a BlackBerry. So, but you'll find that there are different officers will carry different things on their belt, particularly the officers that are working the street would normally have a flashlight or, there's all kind of wild and wondrous tools that people keep inventing. Somebody discovered that cops like gadgets. And so there's somebody that's always coming up with something that is for the officers to carry. But we really try to manage that to the extent to where you can actually have so much stuff. And this stuff is pretty heavy. And then as I've gotten older, it's gotten heavier. That it really gets kind of tough to carry all this stuff.
These are our batons. In the old days, there were a big wooden stick and stuff like that. They're now metal. And that quick, you can defend yourself. You can stab somebody with it if you need to. But that's what we carry
things
now.
have changed. One of the things we talked about was this was something that back when I started in 1978, we carried. These things are now illegal. But we used to carry this back in the old days. The guys now carry a lot of mace, and you hear a lot about tasers and those kinds of things. This is what we call a slapper. This is leather. In the end, it has lead. And you very seldom had to use it, but just the display of it generally got people's attention. And so, but this was something, most of the old uniforms had a little pocket in the leg here where you see that slapper right there on their pant leg. But the equipment has changed a lot over the years.
We can pass this around. A little show and tell.
Chip, did that answer your question, man?
Yes, it did.
Wonderful.
I know your guns, you buy your own guns.
No, ma'am. The weapons are issued, the department issued. That's one of the things that has changed over the years. When I first came to work for the police department, you had the choice, the option of being issued a weapon by the police department, or you can buy your own. Not knowing any better, I thought I'd let them issue me the department issue firearm. What they issued me was a .38 caliber revolver, and if you're familiar with revolvers, it has this cylinder that revolves, and in order to open the magazine, there was a little lever on the side you had to push with your thumb to open the magazine to load the bullets. Well, the gun that they gave me had a screw in the side. The little lever thing had got lost or broken off or whatever, so somebody put a screw in the side. And after my first day of going out to the range to qualify, after about an hour doing that, my thumb's bleeding, and I figured I think I'd just go buy me a weapon. But now that is standard issued because we want all of our officers to be familiar. And in an emergency situation where if Scott had to use, if I was injured or something and Scott needed to use my weapon or I needed to use his, if I'm carrying a .45 and he's carrying a .38, we're not familiar, you don't have the same ammo, so you will find that the majority of officers now have the standard issued Glock 40 caliber sidearm is what we all carry. So, yes, ma'am.
When I was
department's thinking on that. If I, as an individual, feel threatened in my home by somebody breaking in, am I allowed to shoot the SOB or?
You always have the authority to defend yourself and your property. My response to, I get questions a lot about, firearms and those types of things. The only thing I would tell you that it is a it is a drastic difference from going out and qualifying shooting targets to actually pointing a weapon at a person and thinking that and knowing that the only thing between my taking a life is pulling this trigger. Oftentimes what we have found out is that people that are unfamiliar with firearms oftentimes end up introducing a firearm into a situation where a firearm would not have otherwise been involved.
May I interject something?
Yes, ma'am.
Here? I took a women's self-defense course when I, 15 years ago. And I qualified as a marksman. And so I feel quite confident in using firearms. Going back to my original question, am I going to be justified?
That you're always justified in protecting your own personal safety and your property. And that's probably the clearest I can tell you, because there are so many different circumstances that could come into play. But in general, you are justified in protecting yourself or your property.
So the castle defense is superfluous?
I would tell you this: anytime it comes down to the use of deadly force, that would be the last option. So, I wouldn't decide to shoot somebody just simply because I thought based on whether or not it was legal. In my career, there's probably been 5 times when I would have been legally justified in taking somebody else's life, but that there has to be a much more in-depth thought process. So,
Do you understand the scenario I'm
yes, ma'am, I understand.
Not that I want to kill somebody, but if I felt threatened in my home.
Well, see, neither myself or anybody can tell you blanket that you can use deadly force. I'm telling you that is going to be based on that situation at the moment as it is occurring. And so,
So you're saying the law has no validity to it?
then no, that's not what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that if you are in a situation where you have you are in a situation where you need to protect yourself and or your property, then in general you're going to be justified in doing that. Yes.
You're shorthanded. How many officers do you need?
Well, that would kind of depend on who you ask, but I would tell you in general what we have done here in College Station, that over the years, from the time I began working here, College Station has always been a very service-minded police department. We have been very involved and active in the community, and we have presented a lot of programs in our community that oftentimes have been considered unique in certain ways or whatever. So what our charge is right now is to try to maintain that service level. And our dilemma now is that it is becoming increasingly difficult to maintain that high level of service with the staff that we have now. And so we are currently in a process of really trying to make a comprehensive analysis and evaluate exactly what we need. Over time, just like with anything else, you end up doing things, and we're going to start in the next week or so evaluating everything that we do to determine, there's some things we've been doing for a very long time. Are those things still relevant? Do we still need to be are those things productive? But we will soon be able to answer that question much more succinctly. But just in general, probably my guess would be, and again, depending on where you want to talk about ideal would probably be anywhere 25, 30 people. I think probably realistically, 10 to 15 people would probably get us where we need to be, but we are in the process now of making that assessment, because we're very concerned about being able to maintain that level of service that we feel like that we want to deliver to the community, that we feel like that the community has come to expect from us, and that we become accustomed to providing. Yes, sir. Go.
Where's this business of cameras for tickets?
Yes, sir. Well, okay, let me kind of maybe see if I can put that. I've been involved in that project from the beginning. The red light camera project is an attempt to be able to do enforcement at intersections, primarily those intersections that the police officers have difficult time working because of the design of the intersection, the amount of traffic, those kinds of things. So that has come about strictly as an enforcement tool. Again, it's a public safety issue to try to lower the number of accidents, the severity of the accidents, to try to, hopefully what we've seen and what from the research we've done is that for the most part, they have generated a lot of voluntary compliance. After the cameras have gone in, the number of violations in many cases have drastically gone down. So we're hoping that the same will be true. It doesn't really figure into the equation as far as the police department is concerned, whether there's a lot of what our job is public safety, and what we hope is that because many intersections we cannot station an officer there for whatever reason. It's not safe for the officer, it's not safe for the public to try to maneuver in and out. Sometimes trying to work an intersection actually creates a safety issue just by the police officer having to do what they have to do in those intersections. So hopefully the installation of those cameras will help us to enforce traffic laws in those areas where we traditionally have a difficult time working. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any kind of a senior volunteer program?
Absolutely. If anybody wants to volunteer to help us at the police department, we'll be glad to have you. Again, that's one of the things that we are really actively working toward, is increasing our volunteer, the core group of volunteers that we have, for a couple of reasons. One, because we need the help. But secondly, the more people that come in and volunteer and work with us, the better you understand what we do and why we're doing it. I think the better off we all are. And you'd be surprised what we learn from those people that come and volunteer. You have a much different viewpoint of things than I would, having been a police officer for 30 years. And so oftentimes you will look at something, a process that we have been doing for a long time, and we think we've got it perfected. But someone that has not been jaded by all of the other things will come and look at it and go, why are you doing it this way? There would be so much simpler. And sometimes to that volunteer, it seems so simple. But to us, since we look at it every day, so we would welcome volunteers.
In what areas?
Ma'am?
In what areas?
There's a myriad of things. I mean, we have people that come in that help us. For instance, every case that comes in that is not assigned for a detective to do follow-up on, one of the things that we try to do as maintaining a high level of service, we respond back to that citizen by letter saying that we did receive your case, but because there is not enough evidence to follow up, so the person won't be wondering, did anybody ever look at my report or whatever? So that's something we started some time ago. We felt like, back during the days when I was in charge of the detectives, we felt like that I would get calls on a regular basis from someone that said, I filed a report a month ago or 2 months ago, and I never heard back from anybody. And so we felt like that if I make a police report, I at least want to know that somebody looked at it. So we do that, and we have volunteers that would come in and help. When Lieutenant Simpson talked about the number of reports we took, well, that generates a lot of letters that needs to be returned. So we have volunteers that come in that would help us, address those envelopes and get those things mailed out to people. Again, trying to maintain that level of service. And it's a better utilization of the time than having a sworn officer stuffing envelopes. So those kinds of things really help. Yes, ma'am, in the back here, you have a question?
I just want to ask you about, talk to you about the safety that you were speaking of. I live right across from the Lincoln Center, right on the corner of Holloman and Phoenix.
Yes, ma'am.
There's a stop sign there, and I'm sitting out all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and they just run that stop sign like it's nothing. But I tell you what, you give me one of them shooting irons, you got
Well, I tell you what, let's try a couple of the things first. before we get, I bet you we could come up with another plan.
There's a lot of children probably
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
who ain't going to school.
And
People just ride at stop signs.
yes, ma'am.
They're gonna kill somebody.
Well, that is a growing problem in our community. As our community has grown, we get a lot of that. And again, when we talk about that 114 police officers, we're not talking of that's inclusive of every sworn officer in our department. Right now, we have about 57, 60 or so police officers that are uniformed patrol officers that we have to spread throughout this whole city on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week basis. So what we just recently did was when we went to the 12-hour shifts beginning on the 7th of this month to try to, because of trying to make better utilize the staff that we had. But we get a lot of that because as there was a time when I could sit right here that I could tell you right now, tomorrow morning, I'd have 2 officers watching that intersection and we'll be doing it till we get things under control. That is very difficult for me to do now. Because I have so many requests. As our community has grown, our resources are, and then on top of that, those same officers are the same officers that are going to have to respond when someone's house is getting burglarized, when there's an assault, when there's a robbery, when there's all of those kinds. So those same people we're using. So we will try to address that. And I can tell you that we will spend some time there to the extent that we can. But I'll just say this, that is something that has changed drastically during my time. Because, like I said, there was a time when I can tell you what I could have told you, that I'll park an officer out there and we'll stay there till it's done. But I can't tell you that now.
Well, every once in a while, an officer will sit out there.
Yes, ma'am.
And I tell you, they keep them busy.
Yes? Over here. Yes, sir.
I understand the definitions of a uniform, but I have what may be unwanted sympathy for motorcycle officers dressed in black in College Station in August.
We don't have much sympathy for them. Yeah, there's been some, we talk about that and about would it be a better uniform or whatever that they could wear, and we've experimented off and on with different uniforms or whatever, but it's there that nobody's making them ride that motorcycle. So, but we have checked into that, but so far it's working. I mean, it gets hot, but again, that's what it is.
Most officers on the street wear a bullet-resistant vest, and so the difference in a light blue and a dark blue shirt is not going to make a whole lot of difference when it's 100 degrees outside. It's just going to be hot.
Ma'am?
And, they carry water with
Well-
them. You'll see them parked under the shade tree. They'll do everything they can. But
She's asking how much the equipment weighs, and I'll tell you it varies. My belt probably weighs anywhere from, I would say maybe 10 pounds maybe. But if on the day that I have a doctor's appointment, I go and have to weigh in, I tell them it weighs 20 pounds.
I've done this.
So it just depends on the circumstances.
I can tell you that mine, when I was on the street, it was 22 pounds from having buck naked right out of the shower to being ready to walk out the door and go to work. 22 pounds.
It gets
That's
heavy.
with the vest, that's
Yeah,
with the gun
and that's something I
ammunition,
usually
the
don't
belt,
wear,
the boots, the
which
uniform shirt,
my wife is not all that happy. But if they don't come in the office, you're not gonna have no problems out of me. So I generally don't wear a vest, but most of the officers do. Somebody here had a question?
Larry, some of the people here may not know about the Citizens Police Academy. Can you say something about that?
Yes, we will, and I'll let Scott talk about that. He's much more familiar about that than I am. Right before we leave, and we'll do. Yes, sir.
There's a lady over there's got a question before me, I believe.
Where?
Right here.
Yes, ma'am.
Are finances prohibiting you from hiring more policemen?
I think ultimately that is the choice. When we understand that we are part of the greater city, so when we're looking at what we need, then we have to also look at it in light of we have every other city department that is vying for those same dollars. So we're not really, I'm not telling you we've been neglected or been mistreated. I'm just telling you that over the years, as our city has grown, our resources, our human resources, in my opinion, have not kept pace with that. And in years past, we have been able to some degree, compensate that by shuffling things around, by placing duties other places and realigning what we've done. What we're finding more difficult now is finding places to put those things. And so our staff is becoming more and more, we are in many times, you would not find many police departments that has a lieutenant doing the number of tasks that are assigned to Lieutenant Simpson. And those are the kinds of things that we're starting to face. One of the things that I can tell you that you are blessed with here in College Station is that we have a group of dedicated men and women that have been willing to do whatever we've asked them to do. What we're facing now is that it's just physically becoming impossible. There's only so much time in the day. There's only so much you can ask a person to do. So our job is, again, I mentioned the 12-hour shifts. That was an internal attempt on our part to say, okay, look at what we have and how can we better deliver those services with what we have right here now today. We're hoping that sometime in the future we will get additional resources. But that's not doing, when I'm having to look at what's needed on the streets right now today, how can I take those resources that I have right now and better utilize those people? So that's what we're trying to do with that. But yes, ma'am, it all comes down to money. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I understand that it's very hard to recruit qualified candidates for a police officer. And then they're trained, and I understand that in the first 5 to 7 years, there is a fairly high turnover. What can be done to change that?
I really don't know. We have tried various recruiting methods and those types of things. Again, the challenge that we are finding in law enforcement is that you will find many agencies have lowered their standards. We have vehemently resisted that. To me, there is more than ample evidence to demonstrate. I would rather not have them than to have people that are not of the quality and standard that we want. You end up spending much more supervisory time. You end up so it ends up costing you, in my opinion, much more. But one of the things that we're evaluating is, salaries, benefits. But the primary thing is that we're not only competing with other law enforcement agencies. There are so many things, so many opportunities now that when someone is coming out of college, they have a great number of things that they can do. And so one of the challenges that we face is that if our city council were to right now, this moment, say that you can have 25 new police officers, it would be 2 years, 2.5 years before I could even think about getting those people on the street. Because it takes that long to hire, to go through the academy, to go through the field training, before that officer is ready for me to give him the set of keys to a car and say, go police this city. So hiring a police officer is a little bit different than hiring most other employees, in that it takes a long time from the day we start the process until we get a product that we can really use. But the thing that we also face is that, which is different, you will find unusual. I was born and raised here. Never had much desire to leave. People that come now, they don't have that sense of community, family. They will be here, and if the light is shining brighter up the street, they'll just go up the street. It doesn't. So we have a different type of individual that we're dealing with. So those people will tend to move around. I think you will find less and less where you will find people like myself who are at anywhere for 30 years. That probably is not going to be the case. But we try various methods of retention, of recruiting people, but I don't know the answer to that question, but everybody faces it. It is a common problem. Liz, you had a question?
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask, some of these things that people can volunteer for, is there any way that maybe you can send a list down to the Police Academy, our little group, and see if anyone could help?
Sure, we can do that.
And that's a good time to talk about that. Our Citizen Police Academy is another program that we offer, and that's where we bring in the citizens of the community and try to teach them a little bit about the police department. It's a 10-week-long course. We meet one night a week for 10 weeks, 3 hours a night. And one night it may be communications, one night it may be patrol, one night it may be detectives or whatever, and we just talk a little bit about it. There's several folks that have been through that class that are here today. And then once you get out of that class, then you join the Alumni Association, which is a group of these graduates, and they do a lot of our volunteer stuff. They help with a lot of projects, our Easter egg hunt, police memorial service that we have every May. We've got a project going on over at Reed Arena on Saturday called Local Heroes, and they'll be there helping us fingerprint children and things like that. So that's an opportunity where, as a group, you get through the academy, you understand a little bit about what the police department is all about, and then you volunteer as a group to work with some of these projects and stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Janice was on television the other day at noon, and she said the police academy and fire academy were going to be held jointly this year at Teen Center.
Well, we have a full police academy. We have a full fire academy, which is 10 or 12 weeks or so the fire department puts on. And then a couple of years ago, we put on kind of a mini police/fire academy as a joint effort that was more geared toward the senior citizens. It's a little bit shorter course. It's a little bit less physical, particularly for the fire department. You don't go out and fight fires and ride up in the ladder truck and things like that, but you still get to see what's going on. The Police and Fire Academy is going to happen this spring. I'm not sure what those dates are. The Police Academy itself is not going to happen. We're not going to have a class this spring. Because of the renovations that we're doing at the police department, we don't physically have a room to put this class on. So we will pick that up again in the fall, sometime in September, and do that Citizens Academy again. But the combined senior Police and Fire Academy is going to be, I think it is sometime in late March, early April.
I think it's April 3rd, the first Thursday.
April 3rd, okay. And we would be more than willing to get anybody more information if you want some of that. I've got some business cards with me. I'm going to leave back there on that back table. We probably got time for about one more question. Yes, sir.
You could all say something about how you handle residential noise complaints.
Come on now. We're almost done.
This is a topic
Yeah,
significantly that I
it-
think people in the room here would like to know.
that has been a common issue pretty much throughout my whole career. It's how we do it, and it's only kind of increased over the years as we've had this migration of our transient population that is kind of encroached upon our more permanent population. And so we're very aggressive in dealing with those things. We have an aggressive noise abatement program where we contact property owners, management, apartment management, and try to address those things. Again, it is one of those things, though, one of those areas where there's getting to be a lot more of them than there are of us. So it is getting increasingly difficult for someone on a busy night, on a Friday or Saturday night, when a resident calls and says, the folks next door are having a party and it's really loud and I need somebody to go and make them turn the music down. In times past, 10, 15 minutes, maybe somebody would be there and we could deal with that. Now, it could be a significant amount of time because what we do is we have to prioritize those calls. So if that officer is dealing with, a large crowd that is getting violent at Northgate, it might be a minute before they can go do this.
Or an hour.
But we try to address those things by means other than enforcement. We try to do education. We go out and we talk to them. We try to bring in the help of management, if it's apartment complex or property owners, if it's rental property. We try to do anything that we can think of to try to, we'll go out and meet with the residents in a certain area to try to address those concerns. What we try to do is try to create an understanding and agreement between those people that are being affected, because we cannot effectively address that through enforcement. It just won't work. So, yes, ma'am.
I have 3 houses close to me that are student housing,
Mm-hmm.
and they have come up with their own solution. They came over and brought me 6 cell phone numbers. We're going to have a party before you call us. If we get too loud, you call us, and it works beautifully.
And you're the lucky one.
Well, and that's one of the things that we've
Because-
tried to do through this proactive education is teach them that, a lot of times your neighbors will be satisfied if you'll just turn the music down.
Sure. I had a
So
couple
go
of
knock
kids
on
that
their door
lived next
before
to
you
me
party.
that did that same thing.
I
But
said, well, we're having our ring dunking party, but it's okay because our parents are here, so we'll be gone by 11.
yes, ma'am.
I think she's right. There was some students that moved in next to me and they were having one loud, wild party. Well, a police officer was behind me and one was behind that yard. And you know what? That party didn't last but about 10 minutes.
Well, see, they didn't have very far to go. But anyway, we thank y'all for having us here. I would really encourage you, if you're interested in the Citizens Police Academy, to do that so you can learn more about what we do and why we do it. And by the same token, we learned a lot. We learn a lot from what we get from the input from the citizens that participate in those programs. And above all, I cannot reiterate any strongly that we are your police department. We're not some separate entity. We're not an occupying force. We work for you guys. And I, for one, am one of those people that I believe very strongly in that notion of public servant. That doesn't bother me a bit. I think that's what, when I signed on, that's what I signed on to do. And so we want to do that. We want to be able to provide a service to the community. I live here. I raised my family here. So I have a vested interest in the quality of life that we have here in College Station. And I'll tell you, I know I'm a little biased, but you have a very good police department here in College Station. So, thank you.